Welcome to the Realty Plus Real Talk series, where we talk to industry experts and get to know their honest views and opinions. Today, we have with us Ms. Sheila Sri Prakash, who is the founder of Shilpa Architects, planners and designers based in Chennai. And she's not only an internationally acclaimed architect, urban designer, and sustainability expert, but she has been championing the cause of sustainability on various international platforms such as World Economic Forum, UN Habitat, Global Environment Fund. So it's our pleasure to have with us Ms. Sheila Sri Prakash today at the show. Sheila ji, a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Sapna. It's nice. And I have been talking about sustainability for a very long time. And now I think this year has been very crucial for us when it is nature has decided that what we are telling people is not enough. So nature has taken it out on herself to the people.
Obviously, this is a very special episode because on the occasion of World Environment Day and with the background of pandemic that we are going through, it is very important. It's a time that we discuss the relationship between us and the environment. And who better to have to discuss this but urban designer and a sustainability expert. So, Ms. Sheila, my first question to you is, post-pandemic, what are the changes you are going to see in our cities, urban planning, public spaces? What are the transformations that you are foreseeing?
I would also say what I would like to see and what we may see, because I find that given our public, the demography, and our people, sometimes we have learnings which are very deep and we follow it, which we should, but many of us, the masses, may not simply understand the repercussions of these learnings because they have gone through hell, really. Because if you look at the migrants, and if you look at people who've lost jobs, people who are not able to make ends meet, you also see in the papers that there are people who commit suicides, leave children away, leave their pets out, fend for themselves. So, humanity reacts very differently to these kinds of learnings. So I'm sure that there will be a group of people who join the crusade to say that we must be more sustainable and, our consumption should be responsible and we should treat all our resources with respect. But there will be others who say that, okay, let us bounce back and make hay while the sun shines, and to kind of capitalize on this kind of a pandemic for their own benefits. So this is the dichotomy of it, and it's going to be sad if the balance tilts more towards people who are indifferent to this learning. And unless we have more people who are, but let us be positive always and say that whoever learns, the benefit is theirs.
Of course, of course. As an architect also, do you see the buildings will be, we'll start designing our buildings differently? Because right now the most important consideration is per square foot optimization. Going forward, would architects, developers, owners will have a different considerations?
Yeah, I think the basic consideration earlier was to max out on your space, was to make it denser and denser. And with the IT boom, we started having, as less as 50 square feet per person to design in an office.
Right.
So you pack the entire thing. And this will all have to be rethought of, redefined as workspaces. And I think another major challenge would be the central air conditioning and, in these large floor plate buildings where we do not have enough fresh air mixed into our air conditioning system, or where the air conditioning system is not designed responsibly, but it is designed, in a haphazard manner, because that happens. There are these kinds of buildings, there are the other kinds of buildings also. where, window units are put in the periphery and then you start packing people inside. Or, I mean, not window units, even the split units. Split units are supposed to be the most, the lousiest of them all, because there is absolutely no intake of fresh air. So I mean, things like that have to be rethought of, and our filters, our ducting systems. I think HVAC will have to do a major rethinking. And as far as consumption goes, I think we all understand that in an economic crisis, we need to conserve, and the costs of running a building will have to come down, because to take in for all these kinds of exigencies. So when that happens, we will have to conserve on power. So renewable energy will have to kick in. The more, more we move towards net zero consumption, and then the way we treat water. So automatically, when energy comes in, how do we light our spaces? How do you ensure light and comfort level for people working within the spaces? So how do you bring in natural light into the space? Because that is a major challenge, because in these large floor plate buildings, I'm talking about, where it is 30,000, 20,000 square feet per floor plate, it is very difficult to even sit close to a window.
Correct.
So there is hardly any natural light. So you're sitting mimicking, some daylight in your workspace, and you're also mimicking some other country's timing. So
Right.
it's completely unalien to us. And, to work in those kinds of situations is psychologically, it affects the people.
Right. I think
So,
it's time to go back to the roots and stop mimicking the Western world. And I know your office that you have designed is one of the most eco-friendly buildings, and I'm sure it will be an inspiration for a lot of people. Uh, Sheila ji, you are also associated with Chennai Smart City project. You have been talking to a lot of policymakers, city planners. Do you believe these people are now going to reconceptualize, reimagine these smart cities with more focus on the people who live in it rather than the technology, which has mostly been the case?
absolutely, I've been harping on this, that technology doesn't make a city smart. It is the decisions and the design of the city that makes it smart. So,
Right.
what technology you use, what is adaptable, what is relevant, is what makes a city smart. And so, these are smart choices that the citizens and the decision governance makes together. So definitely, I think all this will have its own fallout on the way we are approaching the smart city designs, and only time will really tell. But I am sure public spaces, especially public spaces, will have a completely different outlook. Where I say that, natural spaces, outdoor spaces will get more impetus than, cinema halls and malls, which are, enveloped with air conditioning, with unnatural light, and with a lot of people milling in. I think we will gravitate more towards outdoor spaces, plazas for our entertainment.
Right. A lot of talk has also been going on de-densification of cities. Till now, urban planners had been talking about densification of cities so that you have mass transportation, effectiveness, etc. But during the pandemic, we have seen most of the cases or the impact has been high on dense areas and the slum pockets. So while we are talking about creating mass housing, livability is still not considered an important criteria in mass housing. So do you think these are the factors that we will now need to be talking about in our city planning?
Definitely. In fact, I have done an in-depth study on the spaces, that social space or a private space that each person needs.
Right.
And when you look at that, you see that our houses and the norms for housing where, typically economically weaker section or any family will at least have, Indian family will have about 5 family members in a house, 4 to 5. Okay? The minimum would be the working couple and the children, and sometimes an extended family would have an older person also living in. So that's why we take it as about five people living in a house. So what is the kind of space that each one needs? Today I have heard that with the work at home in progress, where the people sit at home and work, how is it affecting the older generation in the house? And what are our spaces are not designed for this. We have bedrooms, we have kitchens, we have living rooms, and we have dining spaces. But workspaces are not integrated into our living spaces. So what happens is, when a person sits typically in the living room, in front of the television, on a table or at the dining table, to take a call, a work call, or on the bed, to take a work call. What happens to the other people who are using the same facility? So parents, the older generation is not able to watch TV while people are working. The children are not able to play and shout, when a call is going on. And these are the minuses of working at home.
Right.
But this is going to prevail. And this has also been a very nice learning, that it cuts down consumption. It cuts down your petrol expenses, your travel expenses, your running of the office expenses. So work from home is a good thing, but not that everything can be done remotely. We need to strike that balance and understand. So we need to rethink our spaces completely. We need to accommodate for all these things. In fact, I have 3 grandchildren, and on the 5th, all of them are starting school, and all of them need online, computer. So, typically, if we are going to work at home, we will be about 6 people who are all, cramming for a computer, for an iPad, or, for a plug point, and for a space to sit and work without disturbing the other. So this kind of thing puts a lot of pressure, and we definitely need to rethink and, redesign our spaces and with the learnings that we have had.
Yeah, especially in cities like Mumbai and metros like Bangalore, where everyone is living in very small living quarters. So yes, as you rightly said, that we will need to rethink and redesign our spaces going forward. Another important question that comes is, you said that now people will start appreciating open spaces. So do you feel with these, although you are also skeptical on the learnings that people will take, and mostly people will just go back to their old ways, but is there a renewed sense of probably awareness among people, about the connectedness between us humans, environment and natural disasters, that yes, we all are interconnected and are impacting each other?
Absolutely. I mean, this is showing us, right? Though the pandemic is on one hand, we are seeing the effects of climate change. The cyclone that threatened Bangladesh, and now
Right.
the locusts coming in and eating all our food, and then we have now Bombay being challenged with, I don't know, has it struck already, or is it striking?
Yeah,
right
it
now?
is, yeah, today.
Yeah. So I mean, these are the things that are definitely because of climate change. We can't shy away from the fact that it is happening. It is happening. But how do you remedify it? Yesterday we were just discussing, my daughter and I, and she was telling me that 97% of the plastic from the 1950s have not degraded still. The discarded plastic. So can you imagine the load on the landfills, the repercussions of the toxins getting into the soil, and this repercussion manifesting as, more pesticide. So therefore, the food being contaminated, we eating food with some amount of pesticides. So our immunity comes down because of that. And therefore, we are more prone to pandemics.
True.
It's all a chain reaction.
Right.
So we need to realize that nature is a very cyclic, has evolved. Every process is a very cyclic process. So we should emulate and kind of mimic that and see that whatever we take is given back and we reuse and recycle. So that is the key in my opinion. And that would also bring down our carbon emissions, our footprints, etc.
That's true. We are all in it, and while we are part of the problem, we are also part of the solution. So, in fact, in this pandemic, what important thing that we have seen is how world leaders, how governments came together. They started strategizing together. They took immediate policy, measures and quick decisions. You spoke about climate change. You have spoken about climate change on various forums, you're part of various global councils also. Do you think this is the kind of approach we need for climate change crisis, which is much more bigger than this crisis? Quick actions, quick policy measures on global level.
Yes, I think we need governance to take the right decisions and give the right mandates. And then we need the people to respond and work collaboratively. That is the key to the whole thing. It's always like, a huge big orchestra. Humanity is one huge orchestra. And unless we sing together, we're not going to have a tune. We'll have noise.
Yes.
So, we need to work together. We need to work collaboratively. We need to understand that water consumption has a repercussion on the food chain, and the food chain has a repercussion on the air quality. Correct? Because of the pesticides that are used, the air quality has a repercussion on health. Right? So and on the climate change and on seasons. So, these are all interlinked. So, it's like, right now, like spaghetti, which is all together, in a big mess. And you need to kind of, open it out and decipher it and understand the linkages between all of them and respect them.
Right. So what I understand is that, everything which goes around comes around. And it is not only the government's responsibility, but for all of us, the citizens of this world, the governments and everyone will have to collaborate. Whether it is architects, whether it is planners, whether it is common people who are using the spaces, we all will have to work together to probably mitigate the bigger challenge that we have in front of us. Thank you, Ms. Sheila Sri Prakash, to be here with us and sharing your valuable insights. I'm sure there will be a lot of learning for our viewers who are watching us. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Yes.
Thank you.